Hello and welcome to the Intel Brief. Today is Monday, the 29th of June. I'm your host Daniel, and today we're going to talk about the US has carried out fresh strikes against Iran after they hit a tanker in the Strait of Hormuz. Russian President Vladimir Putin has promised security improvements as Ukraine has ramped up attacks. And the Ugandan military chief has shut down media outlets as he slammed freedom of the press. So firstly, the United States launched additional airstrikes against Iran on June the 27th following an attack on a commercial tanker in the Straits of Hormuz, marking a significant escalation in what has become a pretty clear open military confrontation. The tanker strike came amid ongoing Iranian pressure over the commercial shipping waterway, which handles roughly 20% of the world's seaborne oil. US forces had already struck Iranian military sites in earlier rounds of conflict, as we have covered numerous times on this channel. Iran has not yet issued a formal response, but its options range from further proxy attacks to direct strikes on US naval assets in the Persian Gulf. So what? I mean, we're just back here again, right? I think it's likely that the ceasefire is going to kind of hold out and negotiations will continue, as it seems like the US is pretty adamant on getting some kind of deal done here. I think that's most likely due to the lack of military options they have remaining. However, I think it does show how fragile things are and how tough it's going to be to maintain peace throughout the region, even after this, whatever agreement the US comes to. I think the biggest issue is going to be Iran wanting to control the waterways in some description and, applying pressure on them whenever they need to. It's pretty clear to Iran now that, the controlling of the Straits of Hormuz is their best path to victory here. And next, the Russian President Vladimir Putin has publicly pledged to guarantee security of Russian citizens as Ukraine has sharply intensified its long-range strike campaign against targets deep inside Russian territory. The Ukrainian drone and missile attacks have hit military logistical hubs, oil infrastructure, and command facilities well behind the front lines, forcing Russia to respond with air defense systems to protect their homeland. Putin's remarks appear to be designed to manage the domestic anxiety at the moment when Russian civilians are experiencing the war in a way they had not earlier had to deal with it. The escalation comes as Ukraine continues to receive Western-supplied long-range weapons, which have extended its strike reach considerably. That's interesting because I think most of the current long-range attacks are being carried out by domestic weaponry. So what? I think this is likely a statement that is focused mainly on the Moscow and St. Petersburg audience. These are basically the core audience for most of Russian messaging. And I think, especially following the strikes on Moscow, this is who Putin is trying to appeal to. I think it puts him in a bit of a bind, though, right? To protect Moscow and St. Petersburg better, he needs to redeploy air defense assets to the major cities, leaving other locations open, particularly oil refineries and other fuel infrastructure, which, Ukraine can continue to attack at will, especially if all air defense systems are moved away. I'm meaning at specific sites, not, they're not going to move all of their air defense to Moscow. That would be fucking crazy. If Ukraine can maintain this tempo, I think Russia is going to be in real trouble. It basically comes down to how many long-range drones does Ukraine have, how fast can they make them, and continue to identify and hit targets at pace. It's putting Russia in a pretty bad position, I will be completely honest, particularly like in Crimea. Crimea is effectively cut off at this point and lacks any ability to refuel and resupply the region, making it pretty untenable going forward. And lastly, Uganda's military chief has ordered the closure of multiple media outlets and issued a public condemnation of the free press, bypassing any civilian legal process in a move that has drawn immediate criticism from press freedom organizations. The shutdowns were carried out without court orders or formal regulatory action, with the military acting unilaterally as if civilian institutions simply do not apply. Uganda already ranks poorly in global press freedom, and the president's government has a long track record of suppressing independent journalism around politically sensitive moments. The timing of the closure has raised suspicion that the government is clearing the information space ahead of an election cycle or due to significant internal political developments. So what? It's a pretty grim sign for things in Uganda, and I think, as it's laid out in the article, the timing is highly likely to be preceding some kind of political event in which the government wants to control the narrative on. International pressure seems unlikely to have any effect. This is due to, historical precedent of Uganda basically just brushing off all kinds of international criticism and not really giving a fuck. So, that is what it is. But anyway, that's been the Intel Brief. I've been your host, Daniel, and I'll see you again tomorrow. See you.